everyone, I am here today with my first reading weekly wrap up in several months, and it feels so good to be reading properly again and to feel confident in filming a weekly wrap up and know that this is something I can continue on again in future weeks. So my reading this week has just been fantastic. I've picked up some absolutely wonderful books. First of all, I want to mention that I read 2 NetGalley books, 1 Kindle novella and 1 Kindle book. So what a fantastic reading week, and I loved all the books. So the first book I finished last week was a NetGalley book, and that was Ashes by Stephen Manchester. And oh my, was this just like such an unexpectedly wonderful read. The story follows 2 brothers named Jason and Tom, and their relationship with each other is almost non-existent. They don't really get along at all, and they also had a terrible relationship with their father. Both of them hated him for totally different reasons, and both of them really didn't get along with him. And in the beginning of the book we find out that their father has passed away, so they go and meet at the solicitors and find out that they cannot receive some information or some payout or anything that is in an envelope until they have taken their father's ashes across states in America to somewhere far away via a road trip, with them all travelling in the same car. And the brothers do not like the sound of that at all, but they realise that they need to do it. So they go on the road trip, and we follow them from dual perspectives as they go on this journey, which is both a physical journey across America and also a really emotional and at times heart-wrenching story from both of them. And it's wonderful that you get to see both perspectives, because the brothers at times have a true hatred for each other, yet you can tell that they are both decent men overall, that they have sort of evolved as people due to the upbringing that they had. I actually went into this book not knowing an awful lot, and that worked out really in my favour because I was just engrossed from page 1. The writing really hooks you in. It is gripping. As I said, it is heart-wrenching. It's quite a difficult read at times, though, for these reasons. I found it really difficult to read for any massive periods of time, except for towards the end when I was hooked and I was like, I want to know how this is going to end. I mean, in this story, I don't want to reveal any spoilers for this, but I just want to mention some trigger topics. So you've got domestic violence, child abuse, divorces going on, you've got cancer, you've got the impact of how lying and lies within a family can really cause trouble. It is just a really impactful read. I felt like I really learned something about how to understand what happens in a family unit, and that despite all this, though, I would really highly recommend reading this because, as I said, it was an important read in that sense, and it taught me an awful lot, and I did not expect to love this book as much as I did because the main characters are both, I think they're in their 50s if I remember correctly, so I wasn't expecting to connect with the characters, but I really, really did. And so I actually gave this book 5 stars. It's made its way onto my favourite shelf. It's a fantastic read, highly recommend it. The next book that I want to talk about that I finished last week is the novella, and that is The Prince, which is part of the Selection series, and it's actually rated as being the Selection 0.5. So in theory that would make you think that you could read this before the Selection, but I really, really wouldn't. And the Selection series is of course by Kira Cass, which has been all over BookTube for many years now, and I gave this book 4 stars. In this novella you get the perspective from Maxon, who is the prince in the Selection series, and how he is nervous about the selection, how it's not going to be as easy for him as you might realise. If you've read the Selection, you might be a bit like, Maxon's got it easy, but in some ways he really hasn't, and it's really eye-opening to see stuff from his perspective. And he's actually like a breath of fresh air, and it almost made me wish that the whole Selection series had been done from his point of view. Not because I hate America, because I'm one of those people that don't hate America, but just because it was so much more an interesting way to look at things. You got to see more of the girls, their background and what they are like with him, a lot more than what you ever did in the Selection. And it was just really interesting to see America from his point of view as well. And so I gave this novella 4 stars rather than 5 just because I actually felt that it felt a little rushed. I understand that it's a novella and it's meant to be short, but it just jumped from one part of the plot to another a bit too much for me. I'd have liked a bit more flow. But yeah, still a great read. If you've enjoyed the selection, I highly recommend you pick this one up. Next we have another book that I received from the publisher via NetGalley, and that is House of Silence by Sarah Barthel. And this is everything that I could possibly want in a book, sort of chucked into one. It's a historical fiction, but it's got a mystery and thriller kind of feel to it, and that was just super exciting for me. The story follows a young woman named Isabel, and she is engaged to a man named Gregory, and all is going well with that. She's not necessarily in love with him, but she's definitely in love with the idea of the lifestyle that he can provide, which is perfectly accurate for the times back then. It was all about your social standing and what would be in the best interest for the family rather than whether you love the guy or not. Then one day she actually manages to, by complete accident, spy on him murdering a woman, and this just terrifies her, obviously. She runs away but manages to injure herself running away. She doesn't know whether he's seen her or not. She passes out, she gets taken home, she wakes up and finds out that it was actually Gregory that took her home, and she is so scared that he knows the truth and that he knows what she saw. She tries to tell her mum doesn't believe her at all. It's difficult to understand whether her mum necessarily doesn't believe her or whether her mum might believe her but still is just worried about social standing and doesn't want all of that impact. Isabel starts to get really desperate and she doesn't know what to do, and so after some turmoil going on within the family and arguments, she realises that her only way out, or the way she perceives to be her only way out, is to get herself admitted to an asylum. So she turns herself into a deliberate mute and she stops talking, and so she gets admitted to an asylum, and we follow the story from there, and it's such a wonderful, wonderful story. The friendships she makes, the people she meets. A lot of actual research went into this novel. I did some reading afterwards and found out that the author actually researched who actually went to that asylum in real life. Someone famous went there, who actually ran the asylum, and she's tried to put that as accurately into the novel while still keeping it a fiction work and still keeping it exciting and mysterious and thrilling. It's such a wonderful combination of all of that. This is a book that I literally couldn't put down. I was reading it until 3-4 o'clock in the morning every time I picked it up. If I'd have had the time to sit and read it in one sitting, I could easily have done, because it just flowed and it gripped me and I couldn't put it down. And of course I also gave this one 5 stars. The final book I want to talk to you about this week is a Kindle book that I had purchased. I'd pre-ordered even, I can't remember whether I got it on my Kindle late August or early September, and it was a book I'd been so excited to read, and for some reason I didn't get around to it until now. And that is the Bronski, which is the 3rd book in the Magisterium series by Cassandra Clare and Holly Black. And I gave this book 4 stars. And I really enjoyed this. However, I felt like I was missing something. If you're not aware what the Magisterium series is about, it's a middle grade series that focuses on a sort of magic, I want to say school. It's sort of a magic school, but don't go thinking Harry Potter, because this series has been compared so much with Harry Potter and they are not the same thing at all. This series works perfectly on its own, in its own right, totally different. But for me, I just felt like somehow in this book I got lost in my connection with the characters, because something really big happens at the end and I should have cried, and I didn't. I was sad, but I didn't cry. At no point in this book did I feel totally invested in the characters, and I don't understand why, because I read it really quickly. I had been anticipating it for so long. I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the plot, I enjoyed how this one factored a lot more mystery into it than what the other 2 books did. I love a good mystery. You're constantly wondering who the bad person is. There's a spy. You're constantly wondering who that is. I did guess a few times, and it turned, while I was reading it, it did turn out I guessed correctly, but I was never fully convinced of my guess. But at the same time, I felt like this one was missing that something, which is why I gave it 4 stars rather than 5. The connection wasn't there for me, but I still absolutely enjoyed this. It's a great 3rd book in the series. that ending, I don't know where we're going to go with book 4. I can't even begin to imagine where things are going to go from here, and I can't believe I've got to wait until next year, late next year at that, to find out what on earth is going to happen. If you haven't picked this series up, I highly recommend it. It is really gripping and fantastic to read. So, that brings me to the end of this week's weekly reading wrap-up. I have thoroughly enjoyed being able to film this video. I hope you have enjoyed it too. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more book reviews and other bookish content from me, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye!